we've got a really great discussion somewhat planned for you guys today. And these panelists are going to help us get there. But before I introduce them, and I'm going to ask them to sit there for a little bit longer, even more awkwardly, I'm going to just talk about why it might make sense why some of you are here. Content marketing is our topic today. And it's our topic for two reasons. Number one, you said it was important. You were asked what you wanted to talk about at these luncheons, and content marketing was on the top of your minds. But the second reason is because it's really freaking important. There's a reason why it's on the top of your minds. According to Domo, every minute of the day, Americans use over 3 million gigabytes of internet data. 3 million gigabytes a minute in America alone. And in that same minute, about 4 million Google searches are conducted, and over 4 million YouTube videos are served. In a minute. That's crazy. So it's really no surprise that that's where the marketing eyeballs are. In fact, 91% of B2B marketers have incorporated content marketing into their strategies. And 72% of marketers have said that it's increasing the number of leads in their companies. So that's kind of cool. And maybe that's because 94% of consumers say that they will buy something from brands that they interact with online. 94% of consumers, I like those odds, right? So that's why we're all here. We're here because content marketing is important. But you know what? We're still learning. We are still learning. 65% of marketers are reporting that they're struggling to produce engaging content. 64%, over half of you guys are struggling to produce engaging content. 62% of marketers say they don't know how to measure the ROI of content marketing efforts. And 60% say that they can't produce content consistently. So, yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. And as much as marketing has changed in the last 10 years, more than it's changed in the last 100, we got to get up to speed on it. We got to get smarter about it. So good news. You have a panel of experts here with you that have done a lot of the work in getting smart and getting up to speed and ahead of the curve in content marketing, and they're here to help you. And when I say your name and I read your short bio snippets, what I'd love for you to do is just do your best princess wave. Okay? You too, Matt. Beth Kahlich, ladies and gentlemen, has a 20-plus year career spanning digital marketing, SEO, and social media. Beth founded the Search Engine Academy Texas in 2012 and has been a digital marketing consultant since 2008. Beth has seen a lot in digital marketing. Fanny Dunagan. Fanny Dunagan is the CEO and co-founder of Pathylinks, which helps business owners and professionals create social media content and video strategies and plans. Fanny's going to talk a lot about LinkedIn, and especially video in LinkedIn. Nici Sandberg, Director of Content Marketing at Academic Partnerships. That was a great princess wave, by the way, Nici. That was really good. Nici's motto is, "They said it couldn't be done." And the proof of that is how she built a digital content team at Academic Partnerships and now represents over 50 different universities to put engaging content on their websites. That's all Nici. And last but not least, Princess Matt Devlin. Matt has a broad range of experience, including automotive, commercial furniture, software development, oil and gas, has been in marketing for many years and founded MG Marketing in 2011 based on the premise of metrics-driven marketing and a customized approach to each client's marketing services. Now focusing on compelling content and excellent brand design. Matt's unique perspective is really centered around idea first and using big ideas in conjunction with technology to see marketing plans come to life. So we'll represent that. All right, and now, questions. This is going to be rapid fire. What I'd love to see is if you feel like you have the answer to this question, please raise your hand, okay? And we're going to ask a few of these, and then we'll get into more individual questions, okay? And then finally, questions from the audience at the very end. Okay. So, first question. What the hell is content marketing?
I guess I'll start, break the ice. So in the bio that I put online, I put that I've been doing content marketing before it was even a thing, because it's only been around in that language for a few years. But before that, I was in journalism and then marketing along with that in digital marketing. And so to me, content marketing has become something that we talk about, even though we've been doing it in some form or fashion for a very long time. So for me and what I do, it's a lot of writing articles, it's profiling your customers, it's a lot of different things that will help people find what they need on the internet. So content is a big part of search marketing and SEO. And so for my organization, content falls into our SEO team. So we're putting content out on the web and trying to get people to find it. And then we're helping use that content to also convert and to nurture and other things with our rest of our marketing strategy. And so it's a lot of it's online. Most of your content's going to be digital, at least in my world it's digital. But that's kind of what it means to me, is really trying to get people to see the information that you have to share online.
Sorry. And the only other thing that I would add to that is that content is meeting people where they are. So a lot of times people say, oh, well, a blog is content marketing. Yes, it is, but it doesn't have to be a blog. It can be any type of content that you're producing. But are you helping address your ideal customers' concerns and things that they are looking for? And so that's why there's so much research, like she was saying, that goes into knowing your ideal customer, because you can write about how you had a great day at the beach, but if it doesn't appeal to and match who your actual, like your ideal customer and what their daily questions are about getting their job done and achieving something, then your content marketing is going to fall flat compared to your competition.
And for me, I mean, like Eric said, I concentrate a lot on LinkedIn and videos, and I thought about it a lot, and if I were to strip it all down, I really think content marketing is about building trust. Creating that relationship with your audience and your customer. And I kind of categorize it all into 4 things. We build trust through educating people. We build trust through informing people of events, of activities. We build trust through providing inspiring stories and words of inspiration. And then 4th, we build trust through entertaining people, making them laugh, making them cry. So to me, if I boil it all down, it comes to those kind of 4 categories, all with the ultimate goal of building trust.
And then to build on that and confuse y'all, content marketing is also everything. So when you see that great Super Bowl commercial for a car company or a chip company and you laugh, well, was that a paid 30-second spot or was that content marketing? It was both, because you didn't really think about that car company or that chip company or the beer company. You just got a good laugh. Content marketing done, but they also made an impression on you that's going to make you think about their product or service down the road. So that's where it's this blend, and it's constantly evolving to the point about marketing changing faster in the last 10 years. So it's also careful to try to really quantify it, because it can be so many things.
Great. Thank you guys for weighing in on that. So basically what I'm getting is that content marketing is marketing. Right? It's basically, it's understanding your audience, having unique perspectives on a brand that will change or motivate behavior from one state to another, and then executing that in any number of different avenues. Is that right? Cool. That's how I define marketing. So content marketing is marketing, which is kind of fun. Next question, what's the biggest challenge with content marketing that you guys see today?
I think for me it's, and generally across the board on social media, is how to stand out, how to be unique. Because we can have 100 different people saying the same thing, but how do you make them stand out? And a lot of that, at least on LinkedIn and social media, I think, is to find your uniqueness. We could all be talking about marketing, but if we tie it into our strengths and our interests, then we can separate ourselves from everyone else. So, very quick example, I help people with personal branding. So one of my clients is a recruiter. There's tons of recruiters on LinkedIn, tons and tons and tons. And so what makes her stand out is she's very interested in yoga. And so her branding became, her hashtag was mindful recruiter. Right? So everything she does, every tip, every advice she gives is centered around being grounded, centered around empathy, centered around mindfulness. And so I think it's just about finding whatever is unique about you and then making that stand out and tying it to your expertise and your business.
The only other thing I was going to add to that is, it's a challenge depending on what type of organization that you're in, whether you're working with clients or whether you're working in-house. The challenge becomes, how do you put together a strategy, kind of back to our general marketing strategy, but how to put together a strategy to generate content over time? Because we all know that we're supposed to be putting out a certain amount of content or supposed to be publishing for a certain amount of time in order to get good SEO. Well, how do you work within your own organization to make that happen? And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but that is a huge challenge. Where did the sparks come for that content? How do you make it happen? So that to me is a huge challenge.
You know what, Beth? Why wait? Let's talk about that now.
Oh,
okay. How
okay.
do you see content marketing playing a role in aligning internal stakeholders?
Okay, so that's a really good question. We talked about this earlier. So I went, and this is, I think, a journey that a lot of people go on. I went from having my own business to working internally for a very large organization. And there were a lot of lessons learned there for me personally in my career development. And one of them was I knew what I was supposed to do for my client, so I just took care of it. Or, I'd ask the client for something and then just go with it. Well, now that I'm in a different type of internal organization, you have to learn how to communicate with your stakeholders. And numbers speak louder than words. So if you're trying to make a case for whether or not you're going to have a content marketing plan, you've got to have the data behind it. And sometimes you're fortunate and you have lots of great data, and sometimes you have to work with the information that you have. But you put that in a format that's concise and easy to communicate up or through your organization so that they can understand the importance of having a content marketing plan. And so that's been a huge lesson for me, and something that I'm glad to be able to share with you guys too. So making the case, being a good salesperson for why this is something that your organization wants to do, and it takes practice to do that. So, maybe the first time you do that, you present, you won't win. Well, take what you learned from that and reword it next time, or listen to what the objections are so that you can address them the next time you're working with someone.
That's great, thank you. Does anyone else have a story that you can share about using content and content marketing techniques to inspire and or align colleagues, coworkers, bosses, direct reports? Go for it, Nici.
I can give this a shot. I think of that as more of communication than content marketing, but one thing that I had an opportunity to do a couple of years ago at my organization, and we have about 500 employees, so it's fairly large, but our CEO at the time was really excited about student profiles. So my organization works directly with students, and he wanted me to share one of our students' stories with the entire company. And the reason why we did that is to remind everyone why we do what we do. So at my company, sometimes you can get caught up on metrics and leads and all these different things, but it's really great to remember that we're there to help people. And so when we're telling that story, a student story, to say, remember that when you're putting that task in or you're doing that creative element, everything that we do is to help our students. And so we have a pretty aspirational cause. And so I think that that's one of the ways that we were able to use content to kind of bring the whole organization together to say, here's why we all work at this company and here's why we do what we do.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. That's helpful. So, question for you guys, and I'm channeling the room. I can see that this is on everybody's mind right now. In the information age, when there's all that data being published, shared, distributed, shared again, right? How do you respond to the notion that the consumer or your audience is overstimulated or could even be turned off by the amount of content at our fingertips, the sheer volume of it?
So I'll take that one, and I would agree. Yeah, consumers are overstimulated. We all get thousands of marketing messages a day. We're all bombarded with marketing communications. And so my message to you is you got to be bold and go big. Don't settle for average. When you're sitting in that marketing team meeting and the team is kicking around content ideas, if you hear average, get that out of there. There's no point. Go home if that's what you're going to do. You got to go big with it. And so just an example, because you're not going to cut through the clutter. Otherwise, those thousands of marketing messages, you're just going to end up being another one of those if that's your content plan and you're just going to settle for average. And so if you're also not a marketing expert and you're relying on your agency or your marketing team and they're saying, okay, we're going to put these blog posts out and we're going to create these landing pages and we're going to have this social calendar that's going to post, that's all great. You need to be doing those things, but there better be some inspirational, big ideas and content that's going to really inspire and cut through. Don't be afraid to take some risks, to fail, because otherwise you will fail. You'll just be average and you'll be one of those thousands of marketing messages.
That's great. That's great. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I think what I'd like to add to that, definitely do that, but plus be persistent. So if something doesn't work, fine. Move on to the next post, the next article, the next blog. I think it's a really long game. I think a lot of times we think, oh, it went viral, so I'm popular now and it's done. It's not. It takes years, it takes just decades even to build a brand, and I think the longer we are in it, the more constant we are on it, the more consistent we are on it, then that's how we become sticky in people's heads. And they keep on seeing our stuff, and eventually, that 20th time, they might be ready to make that buying decision.
I would like to add on to that because I completely agree. And one of the things that I would reiterate too is that it is a long game. And when we talked about the challenges, I think that's one of the challenges too, is you're not going to necessarily get an immediate return unless you're putting some paid effort behind it. But if you're trying for an organic play, it will take time for this to work. And talking about how it can be years, when I first started this at my company, we started from scratch. We had 0. It was a team of 1, and it was me. And yeah, those good times. So I can relate to the long game of this, right? So it was just me, and we started just building this thing, and it's a grind. There's a lot of work that you have to do to build a good team and good content and produce it regularly. And we were so excited in that first year, the month that we got 1,000 visits. This is a big deal. We were very excited. Then, a few months later, we got 5,000. We're like, okay, yes, big time. And now, 5 years later, we're getting 250,000 visits, 250,000 visits every month. And so you'll see that growth, and we really had that hockey stick thing going, and it's really exciting, but it does take time to get there. So just keep in mind, you do have to do some grind work, do some big fun stuff too, but there's some work that has to happen over possibly years to be able to get where you want to be.
So go big, be persistent, be patient, watch for the increases, celebrate the victories, right? One of the things that we talked about when we met in preparation for this was just how influential storytelling can be as a discipline to anchor content marketing strategies. And that has a special meaning to me. Gatherround, our tagline is stories stick. Can you guys share some of your perspectives on the impact of storytelling as it informs and drives content marketing strategies?
Okay, I'm reaching. So what I see a lot, especially in the business-to-business space, when things can get really dry. I mean, we know when we're talking about human resources, for example, it's hard to necessarily, make that exciting. But where you can always make a difference is with any type of case study. It's amazing to me how much that resonates with people, especially when you create that content, you optimize it well, and you use social to boost that. A video about how someone used your company and how it made a difference in their company. That, maybe it's, students are great. I think that kind of pulls at your heartstrings a little bit more. But even in a business-to-business environment, when you start seeing people's genuine reaction, or even a written case study, if you can't quite get to the video stage yet, those types of content really do resonate with people because that moves towards that storytelling. So don't ever be hesitant or afraid to do a case study or a story about someone, or even just get more information, people writing about you online, because you have like we talked about, content isn't just what's on your site. Content is everywhere. So what are people saying about you elsewhere online? Wherever you can have that opportunity to give the human touch can help in that storytelling effort and help with your brand, which in turn helps the content go farther.
So I find that stories connect, right? So stories create that opening into somebody. And I find that on social, especially with video, there are 4 types that you can utilize. One is the origin story, right? Every company, every founder has an origin story. How did they start? What were the trials and tribulations that they had to go through to become successful? Those ones always resonate. Number 2, stories of customers, right? Just as Nici said, customer testimonials. Those are great stories of some value that you gave to your customers and then how it changed their business or changed their life. Number 3, because I also do employer branding, is having your employees share about what it's like to work at your company, right? The culture there, that really helps with hiring, and then that will also attract like-minded people and people that would fit in with your culture. And then 4thly, and these do really well on LinkedIn, and I think across social, is stories of mistakes that have been made and then the lessons learned, right? Everybody loves that hero's journey, right? Of going through some kind of wrongdoing or mistake, and then along the way, what you've learned, and then the triumph afterwards. Those make for the best stories, and I think those really resonate with people on social media, and especially through video.
I'll add to that, even though you guys covered it really well. Because I know you're thinking, I'm cheating. It's easy when you have students and they're telling you how they got to finish their lifelong goal of earning a bachelor's degree while they were getting chemo treatments. Like, there's some really inspirational stories that we hear. And so I know that those are a little bit easier to kind of talk about and get some traction. So I'll go back to my B2B days 12, 13 years ago when I was working in B2B software for office products. So a tiny bit dry. So we're basically helping our customers compete with like an Office Depot or something, so small businesses doing office products. And so it was the same thing. We did talk to our customers even for that, which I know doesn't sound super exciting, but if you're going to talk to somebody and show how they saved money or how they were able to get more customers or how they were able to improve their service to compete against a big box retail company, that does go somewhere. That tells people that your product does have value and that there's a reason why people choose you.
That's great. So stories have an ability to communicate benefits, communicate value in a way that can actually create change, highlight people And that's actually something that I'd like to dive deeper into. Thought leadership is a really important component of most content marketing strategies. Do you guys have advice for anyone who might be looking for thought leaders within their organization, how to identify, how to leverage, how to incorporate those leaders into producers of content, or at least inspire content?
Well, I'm going to bring up a thought leadership situation that really we came across, and we're very, sometimes you just get lucky. And so I'm going to tell you the lucky story right now, and then we can talk a little bit more about finding somebody. So I had a client that I ended up working for, and they had someone that was their chief medical officer who was blogging and writing a blog post 3 times a week, 4 times a week, okay? And then we'll get into talking about SEO some more later. But he had no one curating his content. He had no one optimizing his content. He was writing and writing and writing, and it wasn't being leveraged correctly. And so even when you get that thought leader, you have to make sure and leverage the content correctly, or it's going to lie flat. And just from taking the time to optimizing it correctly for SEO, we more than doubled the traffic to our website and created a whole content hub based on these great nuggets of information that this thought leader within our organization had. And in fact, we ended up submitting that to the AMA Awards and won an award for it. So it's amazing what you can do. I mean, you have to be looking for the nuggets, but then once you have them, you need to make sure you're leveraging them correctly, or you're missing out as well. So that's, make sure that you have the team in place or the tools in place to take advantage of that thought leader.
Beth, quick follow-up question. Other
Sure.
than writing, what are some symptoms of thought leadership? Like, what can you be looking for to know that you have a thought leader on your hands?
Active in social media would be the next big one, even if it's personal. There might be people within your sales organization who are really knocking it out of the park as far as communicating with their clients, and maybe there's an opportunity to then take what they're learning out in the field and bring it into your content marketing strategy. That would be one I would think of.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to add to the thought leader discussion?
Sure, I'll just add one other piece to your point about identifying somebody non-written, and to build on what you said, Beth. You also need to look for that personality, especially if it's going to be non-written. Say it's going to be something, a video blog or just speaking. You need somebody that's got that presence and the energy to get a room excited and get people engaged and to get your message to sell. And so I've seen with clients where we had to blend too, where you have the thought leader who has all the subject matter expertise, but he's really dry, just doesn't have that personality, because that's not who he or she is. But then we find that right person within the organization that has the personality. Maybe it's more of a sales type of role, enjoys being in front of people and being in front of a crowd. You put those two together, and that's how I've had success with building thought leaders in that kind of combo role.
That's great. That's great. And I'm glad you guys brought up social media, because this is a good segue, a little clumsy, into the next question, though. We've all identified that social media as a tool can be a great platform to fuel content marketing strategy. And if it's where thought leaders can be found, you can almost guarantee that it's where conversations will be had, that it's where a dialogue will be fed and maintained and nurtured. Can you guys give us some examples of ways that you use that two-way dialogue to inform and structure content marketing plans?
In the comments section. I hope that doesn't take away from the other question you might have, but I really, and again, I'll just speak to LinkedIn. You can literally coach, advise, consult, give advice, all in the comments section, especially on LinkedIn, because it is such a B2B platform, and people go there expecting and wanting business knowledge and business tips. And I've seen people, and myself included, I've actually, over time, because I engage with people in comments or engage with other thought leaders and influencers on LinkedIn, those have become clients, or those have become friends. And a lot of that also drives my content. Because if I keep on seeing the same questions pop up in the comments, then I know that's going to become a good post and that's going to become a good video. And similarly, you can drop little nuggets. So even, especially on LinkedIn, when you comment in LinkedIn, your whole network sees it. So it's like a little way to advise and give tips and share with people what you know and your expertise, so that they see little 2-3 sentences of nuggets of truth and nuggets of advice from you. And then from there, again, over time, the long game, that all adds up to setting yourselves up as a thought leader.
That's really interesting. So I just want to comment really quickly. They say the mark of intelligence is being able to spot patterns, right? So this idea of being able to spot those trends that are unfolding, even in the comments section, can be valuable at building out personas, driving the content calendar, giving like inspiring topics even.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know if this relates to patterns perfectly, but the thought on comments brought up 2 examples to me. Don't be afraid to fire a customer in the comments, and don't be afraid to apologize in the comments. So we had a trampoline park client that operates several trampoline parks here in the DFW area, and the client made a mistake with one of their policies, and so moms were trashing them on social media. And the client was asking us, what do we do? And we said, you know what, just apologize. Get out there ahead of it, be honest, and make an apology, make it sincere, and it worked. We were able to turn that negative tide around to a positive thing. People appreciate, the people who are reasonable appreciated the apology. And then the other is firing. With that same client, we noticed a pattern of a few people that were just never going to be satisfied, complained about everything, posting negative comments. And we said, fire them. Welcome them to never come back again. And it worked. It actually got the majority, the other 80-90% of good customers that they did want, excited and behind them, and the crowd moved and said, you know what, yeah, those couple of people were unreasonable. I like you guys. You guys seem reasonable. So fire them or apologize.
Troy, let's make sure next month's luncheon gets revised. It was going to be held at a trampoline park. No longer. Thanks, Matt. Nici, what would you add about using the comments section to fuel a content strategy?
Yeah, there's 2 things specifically that I would say. And one is, of course, we talked a little bit about how it can be a topic idea for you. I've done over 5,000 articles at this point, so it gets a little bit hard to think of new topics. But one way is to go and look at your paid Facebook ads or even your organic posts on Facebook or LinkedIn. And you'll see what people are talking about there. What are they interested in? And if you do see somebody asking the same question over and over, or different people asking that question, you know that's something you need to cover. And even if you have covered it, clearly not well enough. So don't be afraid to go back and update your content, enrich it, maybe add some additional information to it, maybe add a thought leader quote, a video, some images, something like that that really brings it home for people so that they do catch that you've answered their question. And then the second thing would be to use that as, again, an opportunity to get customer profiles. So in some of our ads, we'll see somebody posting and saying, oh yeah, I love this program. This is great. I'm in it now. And then I just message them and say, hey, you want to tell me more about that? And they almost always do. So you can generate topic ideas and see what your customers are saying and maybe even turn them into an advocate for you.
That's really cool. And I can imagine, Nici, I'm going to keep you in the spotlight for a minute. I can imagine there's a difference between students and the comments that they make versus customers in almost any other vertical. Can you talk about the difference between students as customers versus what we may know as other customers or consumers as customers?
So there are some similarities, but one thing that I think is interesting about education is we have trained our leads. So they know our tactics. They know what's going to happen as soon as they fill out a lead form. Somebody's going to call them. Maybe they don't want that to happen. So you see like this very shortened cycle from somebody going from a lead to a customer or an enrollment in our case. And because they've learned, it's a learned behavior. And so what they end up doing is all of their research up front. So they're going to be very thorough ahead of time. You have to make sure that you are out there and that you have information available online. They don't want to really talk on the phone. They want to be able to communicate in a way that works for them. Most of the time they're going to be busy. They're working professionals. They've got a lot going on. A lot of our students have kids, families, obligations. Don't call me. Communicate with me the way that I want to be communicated with, which is typically online. So again, we have to have all of our information up front and ready for them so that they can make a decision, and then once they fill out a form and become a lead, then we know how to treat them.
That's great. Let's, quick show of hands. Who has non-consumer customers? You might want to come talk to Nici. Yeah, Nici has experience in reaching non-consumer customers and also building teams to get that done. Can you talk to us about what it was like to put together Academic Partnerships content marketing team from nothing?
Sure, it was fun. Yeah, so it was just me for a while, which can be daunting. That would probably happen at most smaller businesses or anything where you're trying to start something from scratch. You're probably not going to hire a whole team right away. You kind of have to build it over time. For us, our content has to be very high quality because it's at a very high level in academia. So it will vary for different organizations. So if you are comfortable with not having master's level degree editors and that type of thing, it'll be a little bit smoother sailing. But for my team, I started, and one important thing I would say about this is don't be afraid of freelancers. So you don't have to immediately go out and hire a bunch of full-time employees to get a content program going. You can use other companies like these guys have and start with that. You can do freelance writers, and the great thing about them is, it can be 100%, contract basis, like month to month. You can work with them for a time, and if it works, you keep going. If it doesn't, you can try somebody else. So I have a network of about 20 to 30 freelancers that I use even now, even though we're 5 years in. That's how we create the bulk of our content. So don't be afraid to do that. And then you have a few people in-house also who can review things and make sure that it meets the brand standards. Because when we talk about what is content marketing, it is still marketing. So you still have to start with those things like who is your customer, what is the brand, make sure it aligns with the organization and your goals. And then it's just that it's a piece of content that does that. So you're working to build the quality and quantity in some cases, and then different types of media. So if you're new to video, again, you might find somebody who can help you start that, and then you can learn it as you go. So when I started this, it was just me, but I build freelancers and I started bringing people in-house, use agencies as needed, and you can really start to flesh out your team and figure out what works best for you. If you're in B2B or you need a content or a subject matter expert, then start with that person, or start with a journalist because they can research and they can learn a topic and communicate it in a way that is easily understood by other people.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. So high standards, right? Raise the bar. Don't be afraid to bring in experts if they're freelancers or otherwise. Not every team has to be made of full-time employees, right? That's great. Fanny, I'm going to turn to you for a second. How do you know that a piece of content is video worthy?
I think it depends on what content you're trying to roll out and what the purpose of your content is. A lot of times if you want to provide a connection, then I think just seeing that face and featuring that person, if they're telling a story, some kind of heartfelt message, just having the face of that person staring into the camera and sharing from the heart, that's definitely video worthy because you can tell so much from a person, not just from their words, but from their energy. I also find that people like to kind of like go on tours of places, especially events. So the walk and talk kind of videos, especially if it's an event that has a lot of moving parts, a lot of interesting things. Right now, what's really hot on LinkedIn is LinkedIn Live. So a lot of people are going live from events. And so they will go around, and in fact, I did that recently with a collaborator of mine at an IT conference. So we went and visited all the booths and kind of featured the different vendors, and it was live this whole time. And then asking them for tips. We did fun questions like, what's your favorite superhero? All the way to, what do you think is the latest technology trend? So events are great places to kind of do a walk and talk, feature different people, and people are always fascinated by that.
That's great, thank you. So this is our last question from me. And Beth and Matt, I'm actually going to ask you both a two-part question. And I'm going to ask you to answer both parts from your perspectives. First part, what today does Google actually care about? And two, what's the risk in pursuing a strategy to answer that question?
I guess I'll start. Well, I could talk about SEO all day, sadly, but I'll address it this way. Google publishes webmaster guidelines, and they also have not only their algorithm, but they also have human people that review content for them. And as part of that, those guidelines are always changing, and they're tweaking them, and it's really hot in the SEO community. We all get real excited whenever we see the latest thing. So one of the latest things that Google is looking for specifically is something called EAT, E-A-T, and that's experience, authoritativeness, and trust, going back to trust. They want to know that the publisher of that content is an expert, that other people find them authoritative, that they're doing something original, not just copying off of other people, and they want to see those trust signals. Again, not just what's happening on their website, but how are people talking about that brand throughout the web? Google is crazy smart. It kind of scares you sometimes, doesn't it? But basically, when you're doing content marketing, those are the types of things that Google is looking for. So for example, you can't have something that's mediocre where you're just rewording someone else's article. And the other thing is, and this happens a lot, you can't have one article that you publish in multiple places because Google's like, well, which one is the authoritative one? Even on your same website, don't put the same article on multiple URLs, please. So that's what Google is looking for, are those three factors when they're determining what they're going to do with a piece of content.
That's great, thank you. EAT.
Well, that's a tough one to follow up, and Beth is clearly the technical expert here. So I'm going to answer this from a broader layman's perspective and more from the classical marketing perspective. And back to my original point on go bold and be big with it. Because I will tell you that Google is looking for real human content and answers and insight. So 10 years ago, you could fool Google, and Beth knows that better than anybody here, with your code or with your copy, whatever you put out there. If you tweaked it or worded it or coded it or tagged it just right, you could fool them. You can't do that today. The bottom line is you've got to create great, compelling content. And so a real quick example of that was we have a company that manufactures glass dry erase boards. They were a $20 million company a few years ago, right in the middle of their growth curve, but they were starting to experience competition. And so the question was, what do we do to combat that competition? They had all the regular marketing boxes checked. Great website, great sales collateral, the reps are trained, everything is done, but we still needed to combat that perception of competition and knockoffs coming in from overseas. So what we did was we actually put the two founding partners in front of the camera and had them tell their customers exactly how to knock off their product. They walked their customers through, here's how you're going to want to buy it. Here's where you're going to want to cut corners. Here's what you're not going to need. Here's what you will need. And of course, it was all tongue-in-cheek, and it was meant to illustrate, don't do that. You're just going to save maybe 10, 15%. You're going to waste a ton of time, and you're going to be coming right back to us, the real experts, the leaders in glassboard technology. It was a huge hit. It was their #1 trafficked day ever for their website. Of course, we spun off a lot of sub-content off of that. It generated buzz within the industry because it was real compelling content that Google liked, and that's what won out for them. And now they're a $300 million company today. They burst through that competition and just kept going.
That's awesome. Thank you. That is a big idea. And speaking of big ideas, we've heard from them. Let's hear from you. What's on your mind? What do you want to know from our panelists? And go ahead and pop those hands up, and Troy will come around with the mic.
I've heard statistics about 75 to 91% of content getting zero traffic online. Our firm does audits of all of prior marketing tactics that companies have deployed, especially in regards to what content's been created and looking for trends. So certain types of content that has gone the right way and certain types that have gone the wrong way, and then cutting it off there at the legs. Can you talk about how you evaluate content from your own perspectives in regards to foot traffic online, if you will?
Hello. I can help answer that. So usually the 80-20 rule is in effect with content. So 20% of your content is going to generate 80% of your traffic. It's almost 10-90 with us. It is a pretty steep curve. Like, you see the ones that are going to generate the most traffic. We've pretty much divided our content into two broad buckets. So we'll have some where we know that those are the ones that are going to generate a lot of traffic. And then we have the ones that may not be as high traffic, but they're high lead conversion. And so that's something that just takes time to learn. So for us, we categorize each piece of content, we tag it so we know what basic category it is, and then it's a deeper category. And we can look at those, we analyze, say, the title tags of those pages to say, okay, we know that this grouping of keywords or this grouping of information or titling is interesting to people and it does well. So, and then we look to see what type of content converts. So again, your analytics is going to be super important, and I know that that's the next month's meeting, but those things are going to be important when you're analyzing your content, and always think ahead to how you are going to do that before you get started, because it can get messy if you don't have a plan going into it for how you're going to do your analysis.
All right, we've got another question back here.
When you're just starting out with content marketing or advising a client that's just starting out with content marketing, what are some basic analytics that you should provide for them to demonstrate the value?
So are you using Google Analytics yet?
Yeah,
Just
I have a variety of clients, so basically, and also
Okay.
it's for everybody in the room because we're all from different businesses,
Right.
B2B and B2C. So basically, just what are some, just
Right, some KPIs within that. Okay, I mean, obviously they are gonna want to know what they rank for this keyword and that type of thing. So I'm not saying don't. It really depends on the personality of the client, but you can't completely hide that because they want to know that information. But where you can really show value is your increase in organic. So definitely be looking at, break it out into traffic that you're getting from the search engines and look at that. Then I usually do number of pages visited and time on site. Those are kind of like my three, they're easy to gather from Google Analytics. You don't have to do anything custom, and you can pull those really easily for the month. So that's what I would recommend if you're just starting out.
Eric, you started us off with an interesting stat and said that it was 60-some% of marketers struggle to consistently publish content. So I'd be interested in the panel's perspective of curate versus create.
So you said curate versus create. Yes. Okay. I'd be careful with that. And I think Beth mentioned this earlier, is if you have or perceive to have duplicate content on your site, that could be very, very bad for you. So what we do, again, I would use the freelancer model because you can assign different topics to different writers and create more volume than you could just probably internally. We have 50 different clients that we have to create content for, and my in-house team is 6. So you're going to have to use some other resources probably to do that. And I know it's hard, but sometimes if you're working with different clients, and I don't know what your situation is, it might depend, but if you're in an agency setting and you have multiple clients, sometimes you can borrow from what worked with one and use it for another, but just make sure it's different enough. So what I will do is when I see that a topic works well, I will use that topic for different schools, but different writer, different sources for this basic source of the topic. So you're getting the same idea, but unique content each time. And again, that's why I have different freelancers as well, is I can use the same topic, but get different content. So it's kind of like you get to recycle a tiny bit, but without getting duplicate content.
And the other thing I would say is that there was a lot more curating going on several years ago, but that tactic doesn't work as well as it used to. And if you're going to curate, you're better off writing a full commentary on whatever it is that you're talking about, as opposed to taking, little snippets of articles and things like that.
And then here's a quick angle you could take off of that. Instead of curating, if you don't have a lot of content of your own or about your own company in the beginning, don't be afraid to talk about industry news or industry content that's relevant. If you see a trend or a topic in the industry that you know everybody's interested in, write about it. Generate some content, or give your own take on it in a unique way. It doesn't have to always just be about you and your brand or product or service. Offer value to your client base broadly in the industry. They'll remember that and come back to you when they do need you.
A good discussion today. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask what techniques you use to align your content with the customer journey. How important is that, and what do you do to make sure that you're meeting them where they are, as somebody said?
So we encounter that a lot with being an agency and working with clients who are trying to constantly fill the funnel, and you've got everything from not even in the funnel, because I haven't even heard of you yet, to somebody who's at the very bottom of the funnel and they just need to be pushed over the ledge. And I don't have a silver bullet answer for you there, other than to say you've got to be conscious of that funnel. You've got to have personas of what those different customers look like, and then you've got to diligently and thoughtfully create the right content to meet those personas and those customers where they fall, whether it's completely outside the funnel or at different stages within the funnel. And so the right level of technical, the right level of inspirational, shorter, longer, more informative, so on. So that's how you just got to be diligent about it and be aware of that customer journey and segment your personas.
All right, we have time for maybe one more question. Right up here in front.
What are your thoughts on the shift we're starting to see in the growth and development of chatbots and AI to create personalized messages to consumers for engagement and growth and development and everything like that, more personalized instead of the more traditional route that they used to take more commonly, like email?
This is a tricky question. Chatbots are getting more popular. We have seen this starting to work in MySpace and higher. That was a weird MySpace. And way back there accidentally. But in our organization, in our industry, because there's actually something really interesting. I heard on NPR about this about a year ago, where a university in Georgia was having issues with the summer melt, where you get students who are interested and they're applying, and then they just never show up. And this was mostly for freshmen. And it's because a lot of them were first-generation college students, and they were embarrassed that they didn't know all of the answers or how to do certain things. They didn't know how to get financial aid, and they were embarrassed, and they didn't want to talk to a human being because they felt like they should know, but they didn't. So I think one of the things is just to maybe try that, test it for your industry, see what other people are doing. One easy way is to just look at what your competitors are doing and see if it's working for them. And we actually are building a chatbot internally on our SEO team to start to address some of those questions. And it's going to be really interesting to see what are the common questions, and then how can we help people through this more automated service. And then, of course, some of that turns into content, because, again, we're seeing what people are interested in and what they want to hear about, whether it's through chat or through other means, and then you start to use that for other purposes as well.
I coached these guys earlier to make sure that the switch was always on before they talked, and I broke my own rule. Could I ask you guys to give our panelists and our moderator a big round of applause? Thank you guys so very much.